Have you ever wondered how an insurance company can promise to pay out on a policy like 50 years from now? Well, they use one of the most powerful tools ever invented for looking into the future. It's called the life table. Think of it as a way to write the biography of an entire generation before they've even lived it. It's all about turning the chaos of individual lives into predictable, plannable numbers.
Okay, so let's just dive right in with that big question. How do you actually plan for a future you can't possibly predict? I mean, how can you promise to pay someone a pension in 50 years? How does an insurance company even begin to know what to charge for a policy that might not pay out for decades? And how on earth does a government plan healthcare for a population that's always in flux?
You see, the real challenge is this. Nobody, and I mean nobody, can say for sure when any single person is going to die. But so much of our society, from our retirement plans to our public health systems, is built on making these huge financial promises that have to last a lifetime.
And the stakes here are absolutely massive. We're talking about pensions, insurance, public health. These aren't just abstract ideas. They're basically the pillars of modern life. And they all rely on finding some kind of predictable pattern in what looks like the random chance of millions of individual lives. So you have to ask, how is it done?
Well, the answer is a really elegant and, believe it or not, surprisingly old tool called the life table. This thing is the real hero of our story today. It's this brilliant statistical device that allows actuaries, demographers, and doctors to find order in all the uncertainty of life and death.
So what is it exactly? A life table is basically a snapshot that tracks the survival of a group of people over time. It gives us these critical insights into the probability of dying, our chances of surviving to the next year, and even the average number of years we have left to live at any given age. It's pretty incredible. Now, I'll be honest, if you look under the hood, the math can look a little intimidating. But don't worry, we are not going to be doing any calculations today. The key thing to remember is that behind all this complexity lies an incredibly simple and intuitive idea. We're just tracking survival.
The best way to understand it is to think of the life table as telling a story. It's the story of a completely hypothetical generation, and we follow them from the moment they are born until the very last person in that group has passed away.
And this story always begins with a nice, big, round number, usually 100,000 babies. This starting group has a special name. It's called the radix. From there, the life table simply tracks, year by year, how many of those original 100,000 people survive to their next birthday.
So here's the crucial point. Our risk of dying isn't a flat line, not at all. It actually changes dramatically throughout our lives, and it follows this surprisingly predictable curve. It's high right at the beginning of life, then it drops to its lowest point in childhood, and then it begins that long, steady climb in adulthood.
And this table here breaks down why that curve has such a distinctive shape. You can see that in infancy, mortality is pretty high. Then it drops during childhood. But look, see that slight bump up in the late teens? That's often called the accident hump, and it's driven by things like car accidents. From there, in middle and old age, the risk just starts its steady climb as things like cancer and heart disease become more common.
Okay, so now we have this powerful tool that tells a story about a generation. But this isn't just some academic exercise. This table has a massive, real, tangible impact on our everyday lives.
All right, first, let's talk about your finances. When a life insurance company calculates your premium, what they're really doing is using a life table to estimate the probability of you dying at each age. Pension plans use them to figure out how much money they need to set aside to pay retirees for the rest of their lives. They even help manage something called longevity risk, which is basically the financial risk that you might actually live longer than expected.
Now, at the government level, the scale is even bigger. An organization like the Social Security Administration uses life tables to forecast how many people will be claiming benefits decades from now. Public health officials use them to understand how an aging population is going to impact healthcare needs. It's truly fundamental to planning everything from hospitals to highways.
And in medicine, it's indispensable. Anytime you hear about a 5-year survival rate for cancer, that number comes directly from a life table analysis. Researchers use it in clinical trials to see if a new drug actually helps people live longer. It's even used to calculate things like quality-adjusted life years, which helps policymakers decide which treatments provide the most benefit for society.
So now that we see just how powerful this tool is, let's look at a little puzzle, because this really shows why we have to be so careful with statistics. Sometimes the simplest number can tell you the completely wrong story.
Okay, let's compare two imaginary towns, Youngsville and Oldsville. As you can see, each has 100,000 people, but their age breakdowns are totally different. Youngsville is, well, full of young people, while Oldsville has a much older population. This table shows the number of deaths in each age group for both towns.
Right, so if we just look at the total number of deaths, Oldsville had 600, while Youngsville only had 400. That gives Oldsville a higher overall crude death rate. So, just based on that one number, which town seems like the healthier place to live?
And here's the paradox. If you actually look closely at the data, at every single age, your chance of dying is higher in Youngsville. And yet, the town's overall death rate is lower. So, how is that even possible?
The explanation is right here. That crude death rate is super misleading because it doesn't account for the age structure of the towns. Oldsville has more deaths simply because it has way more elderly residents, and they naturally have a higher risk of dying. The town itself is actually safer at every single age.
And this brings us to a really key concept in this whole field: selection. Selection is just the process of dividing a population into more similar groups to get a more accurate picture of risk. We just saw how age is a crucial factor, but it could also be occupation, nutrition, lifestyle, or even our genetics. You really have to compare apples to apples.
So we have this incredibly powerful tool that helps us plan our entire world, and we get why it's so important to look at the right groups. But what's next? Where does a tool like this go from here? Well, we're all living longer than ever before, and we are gathering an absolutely incredible amount of data about ourselves. Everything from our daily habits to our genetic code, and all of this new information is making the life table and our ability to predict the future more and more precise.
And this brings us to one last big question. This knowledge is incredibly valuable, right? It can help us all plan for better, healthier lives. But as we get better and better at predicting our own individual futures, who really stands to benefit the most from that knowledge? Is it us, the individuals? Is it the insurers? Or society as a whole? That's definitely something we're thinking about.